All right, everybody, thanks so much for coming. Welcome to the final Art and Art History lecture of the semester. And thank you so much to Pepperdine Libraries for hosting us and sponsoring this talk. Today, we're pleased to welcome Victor ACEVEDO. He's an artist best known for his pioneering digital printmaking and video work. Since 2007, he has focused primarily on video and the creation of electronic visual music, while also producing limited edition prints drawn from his moving image practice. His hybrid, metaphysically inflected imagery blends geometric abstraction and occasional figuration. A desktop computer art trailblazer, ACEVEDO was among the earliest artists to use pre-Windows and pre-Mac personal computer software for fine art in the early 80s. He has exhibited in more than 135 group and solo shows across the US and internationally since 1982. That's so impressive. I had no idea. Victor's a mainstay in the digital art space in Los Angeles, so we're really happy that we could bring him in today. But 135, that's incredible. He was born and raised in LA and studied studio art and art history at the University of New Mexico, later continuing his undergraduate work at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. Pleased to welcome Victor ACEVEDO.
So I'm going to go through various phases in the talk. You can hear me, of course. All right, I get reacclimated here. The first thing I'm going to do is kind of set the tone of the context of this moment that we're in terms of digital art, which is an extraordinary moment. There's the history, many of you know, the history of digital art that kind of got rolling in sort of ways in the 50s, but the clock kind of starts in terms of the kind of algorithmic work that we know and practitioners that are becoming more widely known, like Vera Molnar, Manfred Mohr in the 1960s, with purely algorithmic art. So that takes us, that first phase, kind of this 20-year window took us to the 80s, was the advent of the personal computer, and how that was proliferated for large groups of people, and it became a mainstay of ways of living. It was updated because of the personal computer. So fast forward now, that was the 80s. A lot of time has passed. We have the web, we have web 1, web 2, and 3, and now we're at an AI moment. We're at blockchain. NFTs, cryptocurrencies, Tezos, Ethereum are examples that are entering into the marketplace, the functionality of the marketplace. There's unprecedented for digital art. It wasn't widespread in terms of its appreciation or its valuation. So that's, having been in it since the 80s, that's completely new. So you guys as young people are waking up, so to speak. I mean, you came of age, you grew up with computers, unlike someone like myself. I didn't get to a computer till I was about 30, even though I knew of them, but getting hands-on, or maybe before. I don't know, it sounds shocking. But anyway, there's Beeple, not to dwell so much on this because we got a lot of slides to go through, but I just thought we should take a moment and kind of like think about the moment we're in. And right-click save is an important, it's kind of like an art forum online. I highly recommend that. La Random is an important website. So there's a lot of them, but Beeple was there. I didn't maybe mention him. This is the front page of right-click save. I highly recommend that you check it out. Interestingly enough, just a coincidence, they have front and center this book called On NFTs by Robert Ellis, I believe, and it's Taschen publication. Came out just last year. Here's what the front page of La Random looks like. They're a very interesting organization because they have a digital art collection, mostly generative work, mostly online work, but they're collecting it. But they've also have another division that's tracking it, creating a timeline. I mean, this is completed now, but they call it generative art timeline because that was their kind of focus. And that's one of the avenues in terms of looking at the history of digital art, but then you can kind of go wide angle and go into art and technology. So they do that. I mean, you look at the top left here, pre-1850, they actually start, if you go into this, and I highly recommend that you look at it later, pre-1850 starts, 70,000 years ago. It's art and technology. So they make the connection between all forms of humans and technology and how it kind of coalesced into the kind of technology that we know as digital technology. And it went through all these phases, and it was also informed by what was happening in analog media and traditional media work. And that's kind of reflected in this timeline. So there's that. So anyway, so I'm going to start with this talk with actually like a micro screening. I'm going to just play a few very short excerpt videos. The first two are using AI. That's when I have this ready. This one's called Recollector, and it's sort of about memory. So let's see, let's play it. Okay, the next piece is also using AI, and these pieces are kind of what I'm unofficially calling hybrid AI, in that they have bits of live action, they have bits of traditional CGI, as it's called, computer graphics, and then part of it is AI generated. Not too surprisingly, the protagonists or the figures are AI generated. Okay. I wanted to say a few words about this. And by the way, the AI app that I'm using is called Runway Gen 3 Alpha. Some of you may be familiar with Runway. There's a lot of AI apps. I selected Runway because I work with time-based imagery, video. So it's a great app for that, but there's a good handful. I just wanted to point out the music was in two parts and the video has two sections. Rachel Catlin did the music for the first part, kind of that sort of drone. And then the second part was by James Allen. It's a very electronic, it was a modular synthesis generation, and it was from a live performance at a place called LACTA, or Los Angeles Center for Digital Art. So that was kind of fun because we did a live show there with a live mixed video and his modular synthesis. So with his permission, I added it into the part two of this video. And then this is kind of an interesting thing that happened just as I was assembling this keynote. Some colleagues of mine that are based in Singapore, but they're also working in China, and a little bit of that video. So, okay, so I want to continue now with more video, and this is sort of pre-AI stuff, what I was into, and as Kate pointed out, I'm interested in visual music. So that, and we'll look a little bit deeper into that. But so this is kind of in the spirit of that lineage of visual music, and this one's called Anonymous Ambience. And this is also a collaboration with a electronic musician who's referred to as a circuit bender. If you guys know circuit bending, where an example is if some toys, children's toys that generate sound, they kind of like open them up, take them apart, and they turn them into musical instruments. So that has a whole school of in itself as well. So part of his practice is a drone kind of approach. So now the next one is based on, it's from the same musician, Igor Amokian, which is his kind of like stage names, if you will. His real name is Chris, and his first name. So anyway, this next piece was the prequel to this one. And the soundtrack you hear is a live performance. And this is where you really get into the circuit bending. You know, it's more sort of noisy, but it's, you know, part of this spectrum of music that appeals to me. Drone, sort of harmonic noise, if you will, as well as other forms. But anyway, it's a live performance. I believe this is the last one in this opening series, and I wanted to share a little bit different approach. And this is also, I worked a lot with musicians. Originally, this was kind of like a music video, if you will, but I videotaped this live performance of a guitar, electronic guitar, once again, drone-like approach, but with trumpet. So it's this kind of a hybrid approach. And of course, you see the overlay of my geometry, and it's edited to sync. It goes into sync and slightly out of sync. That's where the visual music comes in, is the idea of the synesthesia. I'm using that as a sort of a touchstone for how to edit these, where it's not traditional editing where the music's in the background and we see, the visual. There's this tight connection between the actual audio, and the actual video in terms of points of cohesion and accents and all of that, and representing music through graphically, through visual form. So anyway. Okay. And so if you're interested in seeing the long form of these videos, most of them are here on my YouTube channel, ACEVEDO Media. So I want to bring that to your attention. That once again, they're short excerpts of the ones that I did play. Yeah. Oh yeah, this is what I wanted to say about that piece. Some of the syncing and some of the sort of modulations of the geometrical forms is done with a software called VDMX, which is what VJs use, visualists do to manipulate imagery for a live mixed projection. So I found that it was a great tool because you can record with it. So I brought those live mix sessions, or the output from those sessions, into the studio, if you will, into the post-production timeline in Premiere. So that was kind of fun to kind of bring those two sort of workflows together. So I talked about electronic visual music. How many of you are familiar with electronic visual music at this moment, have heard of it, or a few hands, okay. So the form is, let me just jump ahead, has a long history. Some of you may have heard about this. This book might even be in the library. This is the catalog for a major exhibition that took place in 2005, 20 years ago now. But it was called Visual Music, and the full title of the exhibition was Visual Music, Synesthesia in Art and Music Since 1900. And it was at MoCA, and then it traveled to the Hirshhorn Museum in Washington, D.C. So And I was kind of clued up to visual music when I took a class with Gene Youngblood at Art Center called Design. It was a class based on his book, Expanded Cinema, which we'll touch on a little bit more later. But so what came to me was to update the name of the form, uh, call it electronic visual music, and the acronym is EVM. And so much of, as you guys know, in dance music, you go to dance music events, there's visuals, and dance music is also been updated to EDM, electronic dance music. So I thought the perfect counterpart, EVM, EDM, the visual counterpart has a name and it's updated and it's built on the history of visual music. And let's jump ahead here. So I first thought of it in 2013. If you look at the bottom left, I was working with I was kind of into the drum and bass thing because I went through a period of doing live projections and primarily in the drum and bass and dubstep space around 2012 or so, 2012. And anyway, we were cooking on doing a like a monthly event and calling it EVM Lab. So that's when I first kind of thought of that, but we didn't do it in the end. We didn't get the funding we needed. But at the top left, later, 6 years later, I did the first public event using that term. So it says a special evening of EVM, electronic visual music. And this was at Los Angeles Center for Digital Art. So, and these are pictures on the right that kind of are snaps from that event, live projections and live electronic music. So, and then I just wanted to point out though, then years later, 10 years later, 2023, somebody tuned into it. Dave Paling from the UK published a book. You can get it on Amazon, Electronic Visual Music, The Elements of Audiovisual Creativity. So I was thinking, yeah, it's slowly people are tuning into it, getting behind it as a form, as a name. So there's that. And so synesthesia, I might speed up a bit and then we can come back to things, or maybe we'll touch on these in the Q&A. How many of you are familiar with synesthesia? Okay, a few hands coming up. Okay. Anyway, so just for those who are not totally familiar, this is synesthesia manifests as a kind of cross-wiring of the senses. For example, when someone hears sounds or reads words, they might perceive them as colors. Sometimes words can evoke tastes. These involuntary associations are unique to the individual, consistent and perceived as vivid and real, though different from normal sensory experiences. So it's a real physiognomic or psychologic phenomenon, and that's from WebMD. So my use of it is kind of metaphorical. I was interviewed recently, a written interview, so I kind of thought I probably didn't say it much better than this, so I thought I'd put it into this talk and then riff on it. But the synesthesia in my video work is conceptual and referential in relationship to the actual physiological condition that's present in some individuals. The phenomenon can be echoed figuratively and sometimes literally when the video editing shows a direct temporal relationship between the audio and visual. Yeah. Put simply, it represents sound with visual elements. And then I talked about the VDMX, and the last paragraph references that. One can say the spirit of synesthesia is essential to the notion of visual music. In fact, part of the expressive language that includes synesthesia is enabled by VJ applications like VDMX and Resolume, which includes tools or parameters that are driven by audio reactive functions. Cymatics is another area of research that I've been asked about, and I've kind of put it forward that that's something that's been part of my visual DNA. And interestingly, originally, when I was doing still images and working in analog media, and how many have heard of cymatics? Okay, so less hands, but a few. Cymatics is a fascinating, I recommend Googling it, and also searching for it in YouTube, because there's these fascinating films about it, but it's showing the research. But just to give you an idea, to explain it, like one of the things that they do, and you may have seen it but not known it was called cymatics, they do these things where there's kind of like this small table that's very thin that can vibrate, and they might have sand on it, and then they'll like trigger a frequency or put a bow across it so it vibrates at a particular frequency, like a note, specific note. And as the note changes, the actual configuration of the sand will change with it in real time. And it's interesting. It's kind of like rotational symmetry. It's sort of psychedelic. So these are natural forms. This is a natural phenomena, independent of humans, even though humans come around to trigger it. So that's this is also a phenomena that's been noticed by the scientific community. I believe, I don't remember the exact date, but hundreds of years ago. And this book I picked up in 1980 by Hans Jenny, and he's a scientist studying this. And you can see the kind of imagery. It looks like it could be a computer graphic image, but that's just natural form. Sometimes they do it with water. I'm not sure what how this was generated, but they do it with water as well, and the same phenomena happens in water. So that's a whole thing. Is like frequencies actually modulate morphologies. It's very vibrational in nature. So anyway, getting into some where have been in visuals. As Kate said, I have a long history of doing printmaking in the digital realm, and before that, dabbling in analog media printmaking. But this is a piece that I kind of revisited for the Web3 gallery called Voxels. I was asked to submit a piece for a show online, and this is called Edge of the Universe. And it's a metaphor about how our identity gets mapped in the metaverse, so to speak. And it was also shown at NFT NYC, and also was made available as an NFT piece. Here's some close-ups of it. It's another piece that was revisioned. Originally, we did it in 2001, and then when I was asked to by the same group called Searchlight.art in 2021, I thought, oh, let me update it so it would work well for the aspect ratio and for how they wanted to place it in a web gallery online web gallery called Decentraland. And that was also shown at NFT.nyc. And it was also, another part of this is the NFT was made available on OpenSea, which is one of the platforms. How many are familiar with NFT platforms? Anybody? Actually, it seems like a few more hands. So that's happening, So this is some stills from that online gallery. So it was kind of fun. It's using kind of a traditional. Actually, I have this little video snippet. See if it plays. Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's it. Online gallery is kind of fun. And you could use it just on your desktop, or you could put on a headset to interface with it. This was another group I'm involved with called Techspressionists. They're international, but a lot of the main group are based on the East Coast. And this was a project. It was a kind of online kind of city center, if you will, kind of a courtyard with a lot of galleries, virtual galleries, and it was called Cyberiana. So you could see some of this imagery, like this green piece right in the foreground, you might remember in the video piece. So this is that idea of the visual stills can be generated from the time-based pieces. I used to, for a long time, I would just specifically build a single image, like a painting, then do another one. But now my focus is on time-based work, and then certain moments in the video work as a still image. Not every frame does, but certain ones just click in as if they were consciously composed like a painting. So some more views of that gallery. Okay, so I'm flipping back now. We're going to kind of, here's the back, starting the backstory section of the talk. I wanted to share with you some sources and influences. Like when I was a student artist, when I was just starting. Okay. And so I took my first sort of, well, let me just say this. Some of my earliest memories when I was just a young child was of drawing. So I just kind of did it spontaneously, very naturally, from one of my earliest memories, maybe age 5, but I didn't pursue it, until I got older. And so in 1977, I decided to, go, I think that's my calling. I'm going to go into the visual arts. So I was born in Los Angeles, but I moved to Albuquerque for a while. And there I studied at the University of New Mexico. So, but around that time, one of my biggest influences, I know many of you recognize this artist, M.C. Escher. And I was just, intrigued and fascinated by his forms. And that piece on the left, called Smaller and Smaller, is actually a result of a woodcut. You see the wood block on the right. So he carved all that. It's amazing craftsmanship. And it was actually built up of, I think, 2 or 3 wood blocks. The center center section is a separate wood block, and maybe this one goes around like in rotational symmetry. Another thing about this, I didn't think of it at the time, but as I got into digital art, and I look back at this and I go, wow, this is very digital in concept. It's very fractal-like, self-similarity across scale. And how does that coincidence happen? It's mathematics. Mathematics is the thing that ties together the 2 different kinds of approaches to visualization and the kind of metaphor it is using geometry. So I was very avid about, as I became an art student, like I want to get to. I didn't know how he made those patterns, basically. So I found out that he had a foundation in Den Haag, Holland. He had passed away, Escher did, in 1972, but they put a lot of his papers and his artifacts, they kept him in this foundation, and his family got it together. And it was actually at this Gemeentiel Museum in The Hague, Holland. So I went there and I got permission to make transcriptions of his notebooks. And this is just one that I thought jumped out at me. I mean, his birds and fish and his insect patterns are called zoomorphic tessellations. They fill all space on a 2D plane. Here again, I thought to myself later, wow, this is like a digital paradigm. It has plot points like spline vector graphics. You can, if you look closely, you see the dots periodically along the perimeter of the insect, and they're connected by these Bezier splines, if you will. And also the grid is kind of like pixel locations of raster graphics, discrete, like pixels, basically. So it's kind of like even though it's done with a pencil on paper, it's like a digital paradigm. And this is not really highlighted that much in terms of what's the precursor to digital art. So I like to point this out. That is, you don't want to leave this out. I mean, it's pretty amazing. I think it's pretty amazing. So towards that influence, I thought, oh, at the time I was working with oil on canvas or acrylic on canvas. So I made this large painting using the zoomorphics, but kind of like, I didn't want to copy Escher exactly. So it was combined with a kind of a neo-expressionism. This is called Slated Breakfast. And there's me, 1981, looking quite young compared to now. So it's a very large painting. I still have it, actually. These are graphite drawings using that idea of zoomorphic tessellation. I kind of opened up the parameter of the zoomorphics in that I don't want to have the exact toggle between positive and negative ground that Escher had, which is pretty brilliant, but I wanted to kind of explore a different approach to it. And this is kind of an amalgam of different schools of art. You've got the sort of the hard edge along the top edge. You know, it's graphite, so it's soft, but I mean, it's emulating those kinds of paintings from modern, I guess, what they called modern art or contemporary art at the time, 60s and 70s sort of approach. And then, of course, Salvador Dali was a big influence in the sort of this allegorical surrealism. So it was a way of synthesizing. This is from 79. Here's another piece called Slated Breakfast Visceral. Actually, this is that painting you saw. This was the original drawing of that image. And so you can see it's kind of like this more chaotic approach to the insect patterns or the zoomorphic tessellations. Anyway, I just thought, so that made me presuppose, why was I interested in digital art when it came along? You know, as a child, I was exposed to some technology things. My father was a civil engineer and he worked with the NASA space program a little bit. And he would bring back images, you know, from those early 1960s, you know, space shots, as they used to call them. And so the idea of being comfortable with technology and the idea of being interested in art and geometry, when I got exposed to early computer graphics, I thought, wow, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but the fundamental language of computer graphics was mathematics and geometry. And of course, it was a technology, you know, it was technology, it was a particular kind of technology as applied to graphics, and was digital, and it was also computer. The first name of digital art was computer art. Anyway, so there's some books. It's kind of a nice coincidence that we're here, you know, within the library complex, because books and my study is a big part of it, of my, basically the DNA of my approach. And I just thought I'd share with you some early books. But there's also this other component, you know, the metaphysical. When I was a young man in the 70s, somebody who was really popular was Carlos Castaneda. He had a series of books. Separate Reality was fascinating. Some of you people may remember him when that was, he was very popular. You know, he's been since sort of debunked quite a bit. However, I think the core teachings that he put across, when I say he was debunked, he had these narratives, these books as if it really happened, but he really kind of synthesized his own research because he was an anthropology student at UCLA. I think he got his master's there, probably in the early 60s. So his it had to do with perception and mysticism, and the Tao of Physics was another important book by Fritjof Capra. These are two other books, Ideas and Integrities by Mr. Fuller. Fuller is has also been mentioned. Was a very important influence. Holographic Paradigm kind of dovetails with sort of approaches to using geometry as a metaphor for you know, other realms, or sort of a kind of a resonance in terms, when I say resonance in this context, I mean the resonance of sort of the beyond. You know, we're in the here and now, but we all feel this larger vibration. I mean, being next to the ocean, it's very prominent, which is really amazing. And that's happening all the time, even when you're not near the ocean. But you have to tune into it, and people do it by meditation and such. So that's where the holographic paradigm comes in. So it's kind of like this metaphysical approach or perception expressed through geometrical phenomena. And let me read just a little bit of this. This is from that holographic paradigm. I could see I'm going to run out of time for us, so I'm going to speed up, but I just want to, down at the bottom, it says, when I read this as a student in 83 or just out of college, the number one is space is embedded in the domain of the spirit. Two, this is a six-dimensional Euclidean space rather than just the three-dimensional Euclidean space that one perceives as the purely physical level of consciousness. So Tao of Physics, I'm going to speed up because I want you to at least see all the images, so I can't talk about them all. And this is in the Tao of Physics, there's a void matrix that came out of this sort of description of the substrate of reality we find in Buddhism, Eastern mysticism. So in the back of synergetics, this diagram really stopped me in my tracks, which is this, I thought it was a great metaphor for the void matrix, and it was kind of a network based on this vector equilibrium, or this omnitriangulated matrix. And this is an object nested in it. It looks kind of like a cube, but it's another kind of polyhedra. So I thought, yeah, this is a perfect metaphor for objects in the field as a net, expressed as a network. You know, there had been field in painting before, in visual arts, color field, you know, using color contrast. So this is like a pen and ink drawing based on that research. So aforementioned Gene Youngblood, I was introduced to his class at Art Center, and I took the class. And that's when I found out about computer graphics in 1980, and I took it again in 81. And he had written a book called Expanded Cinema, and I'd never seen anything like this before. Ed Emshwiller, seeing this piece called Sunstone on the left. It's still on YouTube. I recommend checking it out. It's very much of its age. It's simple by today's terms, but at the time I was like amazed. I'd never seen anything like it. I go, yeah, I want to get into computer graphics, computer art. So these are early, some of my earliest attempts. I went with Paint Systems. So this coincides with the desktop revolution, the personal computer. So Paint Systems became available, and then also 3D modeling on the desktop. And this shows you kind of in one slide the relationship between analog media and digital. So there's photography, there's this sort of tracing on the top left, blue ink, and then there was this start of an oil painting using that overlay of like a void matrix overlay, or a vector network. But I didn't finish it because by then I was into computer graphics, and so I kind of realized it in a more sort of exact way. Image on the bottom right, and that's called Ectoplasmic Kitchen. And there's the original photograph. These are just some studies. So this workflow was a combination of Paint System. Well, this is actually a 2.5D system where you can draw polygons and fill them in with color. So I was assembling these figures with kind of planes that were catching light to sculpt them in a 2D form. And this is probably the most well-known piece from this series, Ectoplasmic Kitchen. So it combines the influences that I've shared before, the zoomorphics of M.C. Escher, the spherical geometry of Buckminster Fuller, and an everyday scene. I suppose there is a little bit of surrealism there, but that was another part, is like every everyday moment can be a springboard into sort of cosmic consciousness, if you will. So that was sort of maybe not in such lofty terms, but just as I'm talking fast and trying to get the point across, you can kind of put it like that in the moment. And this is the red image on the left is a sort of a flyer for my very first public showing of computer graphics, 1988 in Pasadena, Glendale Brand Library. So this is kind of fun. These are, it's a floppy disk, and these are little thumbnails of these pieces that I was working on. So these are the days of floppy disk. Probably only a few of you remember these. And here's the piece that was being made there. And then this was another series called the Wired Couple series. So I'm using those spatial articulations of polyhedra, close packed forms. In this case, these are called truncated octahedra. So so that's another thing is space frames. Like Escher had 2D contiguous all space filling tiles. You can see it on the right here. But then you can have all space filling polyhedra that fill all space edged face to face. And so that's a whole area of study. So underlying these images is a preoccupation with creating a graphical metaphor for space and how we populate a space and interact with energetic events that might be metaphysical or not. And this is another well-known piece called Tell Me the Truth. These are some from this period. You can see the dates, 1989, 91. Variation using the geodesic sphere. So this is on object, aforementioned. This is a blockchain platform. They sell tokenized images. So, I mean, this is unprecedented that people would want to buy digital files. And there's a lot of theories on why that is. I mean, younger generations just grew up with virtuality, with gaming. Gaming is very real. So the idea of possessing something, collecting something in a purely digital domain is not that crazy. That's one part, how I look at it, because, it came out after me, meaning all this sort of developed way after I started as an artist. But it's been, gratifying that, digital art was hard to sell, but I'm starting to make sales now. Not the giant $69 million sales. That was a thing to get everybody's attention. We could talk for 15 minutes on the Beeple sale. If some of you may know about that, but things leveled off. There was a quick bust and boom, and here's the metaphor that people use. When there was the dot-com crash in, I forget when that was, at the turn of the century, everybody had been speculating and investing. A lot of people had. And then, the same, Web 1, websites and all this commerce on it was going to happen, but it kind of like just, basically there was a crash, but the internet didn't go away. Speculators went somewhere else, but it was then time to build up because the technology was sound. And that's what's happening with the blockchain technology and how it relates to Web3. Then you put AI into the mix and, we're in a whole new ball game. And I know AI is controversial. There's a dark side, but it's up to us as humans to kind of guide it and use it for good. Because any technology that comes along, you can go back to the caveman days, can be used for good or bad. So we're dealing with that. Here's another piece called Lace Maker. This is an art history reference, if you will. It's influenced by the Lace Maker by Johannes Vermeer, a oil on canvas piece from 1665. So the little story about this is I didn't ask this woman to pose as the lace maker. I was at a New Year's Eve party in New York, and her little necklace had fallen apart, and she was putting it together, and she was focusing on that. And then having known the lace maker, I go, wow, in that instant, I go, she looks like she's the lace maker. So I took the photograph, and then I added this geometry that kind of has those illusions as well as everything else. So, am I blowing through Q&A time? It's okay. Oh, okay, thanks. Okay, we could do it. Well, I'm going to hang around after this, so you can come and ask me, directly. This is another piece, NYC 83. So you can see my concept. These are still images. So that kind of synthesis of geometry and figuration, everyday life. So self-portrait, it's kind of a virtual object. So in working with, sort of EDM visuals, a new body of work emerged out of my practice, which was kind of non-objective, purely abstract, non-figurative. And then this is a computer graphic model, but it's tweaked out, kind of this these biomorphic forms, and that comes out using that VJ real-time morphing software. And here's another image. So, okay. Yeah, I'm actually, okay, it's good that I sped up. I'm coming to the last couple of slides. So anyway, this is my book, and we have it in the library now. Okay. Like, all of you know. You could go and check it out. Yeah. So there's that. And that, it's a more comprehensive accounting of what I've shared with you. Like the whole title is Acevedo in Context, Analog Media, 1977 to 1987, Digital Media, 1983 to 2020. Of course, that's when I wrapped the book up, right? And I published it in 2022. Of course, a lot of things have been happening in the last 5 years, but they're not in this book. So I'll have to go do a second volume. But it's also available as an ebook on Amazon. So those of you who are interested in that. And then I want to share this with you is what I'm working on now is I co-curated an exhibition that was staged at the Barrett Gallery at Santa Monica College last year, 2024, and we're making the catalog. So as a co-curator and also, I'm involved with digital publishing. So I'm doing the design on this. So this is a book that's going to be coming out, if not late December, it'll be coming out early January, we hope. And just a modest 100-page catalog for the exhibition, and also this festival of events that were in Santa Monica called the DNA Festival. So that's the cover. So I just wanted to kind of plant a seed about that. So let's see. So it comes full circle. You can find me, email, my YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram, I'm on X, and I'm on LinkedIn. So anyway, thank you so much for your attention.